Come on, let's go. Start going. They're on. Good evening. Welcome, fellow travelers on the path. Welcome to our first official Sunday Night Live chat with Doug. I'd like to say good evening to my producer, Rob. Say hi, Rob.
Hey, Doug. Hey, everyone.
We're just a little about 1 minute past our broadcast time. We have you might hear them in the background. We have a engagement party outside the studio here tonight. And there was a troop of women that came by trying to get Rob to go dance. So we had to kind of navigate that. But we got that taken care of. So what I'd like you all to do is feel free to chat in anytime this evening. We're going to be covering a topic or two. And I'd also like you to comment. But I'd like you to also, if you've got some ideas of some other things that you might want to talk about, we'll take a look at those. And if we can get to them this evening, that would be great. I'd love to segue out of different topics and kind of just see what you want to do. This evening's topic, I came up with, as I like to normally, I came up with it by just kind of seeing what comes up in my life in the day or two before the broadcast. What comes up in conversations and what comes up, just thoughts that come through. What does life present me? Last night I was at a party and got into a conversation with a friend of mine, and the topic of energy vampires came up. And I thought, wow, what a great topic for tonight's broadcast, energy vampires. Now, I suspect when I say that, 2 or 3 images come through your mind, people that you may know, or you may have had an encounter just recently with one. So, what is an energy vampire? And by the way, as I start to talk about this, any examples that you have or some input that you'd like to give, chat in on that, and we'll discuss it and acknowledge it. Energy vampire, from my take, is someone who drains me, just drains your life energy away. It feels like somehow you've opened a vein and just your blood just drains out. It can be through a conversation or a regular encounter, maybe just somebody you're always supporting or giving to, giving your time, giving your money, giving your energy. But those energy vampires, we have this perception in our culture, and which is accepted, that someone is doing something to us, right? They're taking our energy. Well, I'm going to challenge your perspective on that this evening, because my thought here is that
I don't know. I think we should be back in a second.
okay, hopefully we're back. Again, trying to get Rob not to be out there dancing. He's got to be at the computer, keeping things rolling here. Anyway, these energy vampires in my life, I found that it was my own overgiving or not knowing how to set boundaries that really was the problem. In fact, the whole key here is not knowing how to say no, not knowing how to back off. And it's a really hard thing to do. It can lead to a lot of things. For instance, another conversation I had is about codependency. That's a manifestation of kind of leads into this energy vampire idea. The bigger concept with this is this balance or lack of balance in net giving versus net taking. At any given point in our lives, we're takers or we're givers. Now, when we're kids, we're children, we're dependent, we're net takers. We have to take. Huh?
I'm showing that we're offline. Okay, now we're back. I don't know what's happening.
Okay, we got gremlins. This is any birth of a new channel, any birth has got pain, it's got glitches, so bear with me, apologize. This is all, you're part of the journey, you're part of the story. You can look back on this years from now when we're huge here on YouTube, and you can say, I was there that first night when they kept going offline and that it was all weird, but we're still having fun. So anyway, this net giving and net taking idea. We're net takers at some point, and then later on we have to be the giver. So it's a flow, it's a balance. It's when this gets out of balance that we get this perception that people are draining us. When we're giving past our comfort zone, or I would say past our edge, when we're giving past our edge, makes us reactive in a lot of ways. How do we know? How do we know when we're giving past edge? Why don't you guys chat in and give me some examples of how you found out? What are the symptoms? How did you feel? Were you angry? Were you resentful? I know I have been. Maybe I get worn down to a point I get sick a lot. I find myself just worn down. I feel like I'm giving my life's blood at work or in a relationship or to my children even or my family. So net giving past edge. Oh, it gives me a story. A number of years ago, I had a student of mine come to me, and she came with this complaining of really debilitating migraine headaches, and said, Doug, is there anything that yoga or meditation or breath work or any of these kinds of things, is there anything we can do for these migraine headaches? Well, I didn't have an answer right away, but I listened to her and we talked, and her story kind of unfolded, and what she was telling me is that every week she was having a couple of different phone conversations, regular conversations every week with the same two people. One was a relative and one was a really good friend. And both of these folks had a common denominator in those phone calls. And the fact was that they were kind of complaining and just kind of whiny, I guess, and just brought her down. She felt like they were draining her energy. But she'd listen, and their negative talk and their negative perspective wore on her. And conversations lasted about an hour. And when she was done with those conversations, she inevitably would go into a migraine. And I'm not talking about a little one. I've never suffered from migraines, but listening to her story was brutal. Those of you out there who suffer from migraines, you're going to really understand this. She would be in bed, sometimes up to 2 days, throwing up and this type of thing. Horrendous. So if you imagine she's doing that twice a week, half the week she's out of play. So I asked her, do these two individuals have their own individualized ringtone on your phone? And she said, well, yeah. So I said, so when you hear the phone ring, you know who it is? She said, yeah. And I said, well, when do you start feeling that stress start to build? Oh, as soon as I hear the phone ring. Okay. So I just suggested, and this was really just shooting from the hip, I suggested, why don't you neutralize all of your phone rings? Everyone gets the same one. So that seemed pretty easy enough. So I saw her a week later, didn't talk to her in the interim, and I said, well, how'd it go? She said, I didn't have one migraine last week. I said, wow. How did that happen? She said, well, everybody had the same ringtone, so when the phone rang, I didn't know who it was, and she didn't feel compelled to answer the phone because she didn't hear her special friends and family calling. So she never answered the phone. And towards the end of the week, she decided to call them, not thinking she hadn't heard from them, make sure everybody was okay. And it was amazing because she didn't have a migraine all week because she didn't answer the phone. When she finally got back into contact with them, interesting enough, just that little hiatus of regular phone contact, they changed their tone. They changed how they talked. They changed the topics they talked about. It became very functional. And going forward, she did not experience migraine headaches because of those phone calls going forward. Now, I think that was I'd say a little bit lucky on my part, on her part, that we came up with something relatively easy. But what that shows you is she built a wedge between stimulus and response. She found a way to say no. She couldn't say no to the big, oh, I just won't talk to them. But she found a way to say, well, I'll say no to that. I'll reduce it. I'll change the dial tone. I'm not saying I'm going to quit. It was almost like taking a fast, just a little bit. Made a huge difference. So, of course, later on, we had to kind of get behind some of the reasons that she felt compelled to talk to folks that were, causing this emotional and psychological strife. And that was another story for another time. But here's a case where simply needing to step back, needing to identify that this situation is bringing me into pain. It's pushing me past edge. Now, many of us find ourselves giving past edge. I've been in situations in my family over time. Sometimes it happens with our children. Sometimes it happens with people who borrow money from us. That could be family. It could be friends. We give and give and give until we get just really ticked off, but we don't know how to stop it. So my advice right now is find those small ways. Maybe thinking about that diatone. Find small ways to just build a wedge. Say, I'm not gonna interact right now. You're asking me for something. I'm gonna say, not right now, a little bit later. Let me get back to you on that. Small ways to say no. The other side of this net giving and net taking is the net taking past edge or past your comfort zone. That can happen too. We can be that person who, I think about the 42-year-old who lives in the basement, his parents' basement, and plays video games all day. I'm probably not anybody in reality that I know, but it paints a picture. Someone who is taking and not part of this energy exchange. How does that affect them? How is that bringing them past edge? Well, I can tell you, it affects them right off the bat with ruins their self-esteem, lowers their self-esteem. It can cripple them socially, economically, take away opportunities for them to learn how to be out on their own. So if you realize there's a net giving and net taking dance there. The parents who got the 42-year-old in the basement, they're giving past edge. The guy in the basement, he's taking past edge. So we have this imbalance on both sides. So in reality, no one is taking our energy. We're putting ourselves into situations that cause ourselves to be drained. Takes away from our resources. What are our resources? Our time, our money, our energy. Rob, you got any examples on that? Any ideas on that?
I was just thinking how, uh, we have this dance in our relationships, and sometimes when I've got those vampires in my life, I need to find a strategy to kind of work with those people. And for instance, somebody who's asking me money, like, and I know that they're calling me for that, and I know they need help. I want to help them, but I'm going to give it 24 hours before I call them back. Or it's another way of saying no, I guess.
You built that wedge between stimulus and response. If you've got now, nobody calls me for money, okay, because for obvious reasons. You got to have some for somebody to want to get it. But and what Rob just said is another example. You got a situation where people are trying to tap you for money. He built that wedge. I'll give it 24 hours before I make a response. Gives him time to figure out how he wants to handle it. He's not going to be reactive. Gives him time to kind of think it through, and it might give the other person time to come up with their own solution to their problem. Has that ever worked out that way?
Oh, it works out like that all the time, and that's how I kind of figured it out. I would just get lazy about, or dreading, or for whatever reason, I wouldn't call that person back, and then I call them back a day later, and they're out of that hot zone. They're out of the frying pan,
out of the crisis,
and we can, it's not a problem anymore.
That's so. What I'm going to say to you all is, you've identified some of these situations in your life where you found that person or those persons who you spend time with, you spend energy on them, and they're draining you, and you don't know what to do. Look for some of these little ways. Rob gave you a really great example from his life. I gave you an example from one of my students. Find those small ways. Don't go to try to tackle the whole thing. Build a little bit of space. Just cause the situation to calm down. Be able to drop back and assess it. And very often these things solve themselves. One of the other things that this energy vampire thing reminds me of is when I still do body work and massage therapy and energy work. And when I was training for this, there was, of course, this concept that people were going to take your energy, and you had to be really careful about giving away too much energy while you're doing some sort of procedure or some therapy with someone. And actually, I've talked about this concept with other healthcare providers, to include doctors and nurses, where they're dealing with folks who are energetically needy. I mean, they're sick. Sometimes they're dying. I was a hospice volunteer for many years working with the dying, and I know that it's not the fault of the patient. It's a natural thing to be wanting to find energy where you get it, where you can find it, and you're clinging. And what to do about that? How do body workers and medical folks and other caregivers, how do they handle this idea of energy vampires? And if I've got any of you folks out in the audience tonight, I'd really love to hear from you too. What are some of the things that work for you when you're dealing with folks who inadvertently are they need your energy because you're vibrant, you're alive, and you're caregiving? One of the things I realized is that if I try to give anyone my energy, a limited resource of what I have, eventually I'm going to deplete myself. Now, some of these earlier examples we talked about, giving our time, giving our emotional input, giving our financial input. Well, eventually those are resources that are going to deplete. And as those start to deplete, we get resentful. But we're talking on another level where folks are in a therapeutic or healing relationship, and they're looking at us as energy sources, subconsciously or unconsciously. What do you do with that? And one of the things I came to realize is that if we allow ourselves to not try to give our energy away, not mentally construct it as I'm giving my energy away, but visualize yourself maybe as a conduit for energy. A conduit for energy. That's a big idea. But the idea that energy can flow through me as opposed to coming from me. And if we look at the greater universe as an abundant, infinite source of energy, as so many of the wisdom traditions tell us it is, we just have to learn to open ourselves as conduits. And we have an endless supply. One of the techniques that has worked for me, and it's used in many different cases, it's taught by many people, to visualize and facilitate that, is just the breath. Is just that full diaphragmatic breath. Now, in the yoga tradition, the breath is the vehicle for prana, or life energy. Other traditions call it chi. But the idea is just using the breath to help us open ourselves as energy channels. And then you're not going to get depleted. I found this worked. I've had cases where I thought I was going to be giving my energy, and I played out and got sick very quickly when I learned how to just open myself to that energy. And I used the breath as just a vehicle for that visualization. It changed everything. I was able to see numerous clients, numerous patients a day. I was able to be with folks who are literally on their deathbeds and not walk away drained, but actually I felt alive. Now, this is another very, very significant idea, because when we come into this idea of flow, and this is really the theme, if you start to hear what we're saying tonight, is that this idea is about flow, giving and taking, whether it's resources, whether it's energy, it's a dance, it's a flow. At any point, if one end of that funnel, one end of that conduit gets clogged, what's in the funnel, it drains out and it plays out quickly. So we have to stay open. We have to flow. What do you think about that, Rob?
It's hard to know when we're flowing and when we're reacting sometimes.
That's true. Flowing versus reacting. I think it's a feel. When speaking of dancing, had you gone out there and danced, you probably would have gotten into this idea of I danced with someone, and some of you maybe in the audience have danced or done some other similar body activity. Maybe it was just dancing on your own, or yoga, or martial arts, or any of these things, Tai Chi, any of these things. And just notice that over time, you're no longer reacting to the other person, but you're just flowing. There's a harmonious dance of energy back and forth. where I'm going with this is we can take this idea into relationships as well. Last week we talked about relationships a little bit. Yeah. And I think I kind of wanted to move on a little bit and talk about this. Last time we talked about surrendering to a relationship and what that meant. But part of this, even in a relationship, we can have this giving and taking. One party can bring into a relationship this proclivity to be the giver. That's who I am. I'm the giver. That's somehow I've developed this idea that I'm going to be the giver. I've been the giver in my family. I'm the giver in my job, and I'm going to take that probably an imbalanced perspective. I'm going to take it into my relationship. I don't even know I'm taking it in. And on the other hand, another person could go in and be a net taker, and they take that into a relationship. Once again, both of those are imbalanced perspectives and are going to provide a formula for some real problems in a relationship. I know I've been in those where, uh, not the relationship I'm in now. I have a wonderful marriage right now, but in my time historically, once upon a time, I've been in a relationship where I felt I needed for some reason to be the net giver, and I can tell you that just led to it led to disaster. It led to resentment. That was the first thing that came up. It led to resentment and a feeling that someone owes me something and I'm not getting my due. Does that sound familiar?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so I sort of realized something there is that I had to get behind that. But then, like this energy flow that we talk about, we have to also realize that love is in that same category as the energy. It has to flow. Love is a little bit different than your resources of money, time, physical energy. Those things have limits. Those things have a limited quantity. You only have so much money, you only have so much time. But the things that we can give and take with abundance are that universal energy, that life energy, but also love. If we open ourselves to love, to bringing love in and letting love flow out of us, we will have an endless supply. But when we feel we're giving our love or we're taking love, that sets us up for usually a problem. Instead of visualizing ourselves or thinking of ourselves as simply conduits, I'm not the source of the love, it's flowing through me. I'm just allowing it to come through. And that tends to make a big, big difference. So Rob, we got anything on the chat on that?
No. I'm wondering though. How does it look to you guys? How does it sound?
Yeah, could you give us a tech check on that? This is being our first real live broadcast. Is this coming through loud and clear? Is the video look good? Does this audio sound good? Be kind, please. Okay.
Well,
So Rob, you had something else you wanted to talk about this evening too, didn't you?
I guess it's more about just it's not productivity in general. About productivity in general, and this idea of you know there's a lot of things I can do to improve my life and to change things, but it's easy to procrastinate. And so how do I get going on that? And I heard this thing about don't worry about what you can do in 20 years, but what can you do in the next 20 minutes?
Sure.
And does that make sense or does that work?
Oh, I think so. I think one of the biggest things we run into as an obstacle in life, and I've certainly had to deal with this as well as you, is feeling overwhelmed, feeling I don't have motivation. When I feel overwhelmed, that there's too much to do, I tend to do nothing. Does that sound familiar? And you kind of you get paralysis.
Or I get really good at doing the stuff that's not important.
Or well,
Yeah.
because it's easy. Sometimes it's the easy stuff. We go for the low hanging fruit. I think what you said is is just taking it one bite at a time. That old adage, you can eat an elephant if you do it one bite at a time, and this is a basic life skill of being really clear on where do you say you want to go? What is the direction you say you want to go? And then evaluate every mini goal, if you will, or mini direction to make sure you stay on track. Years ago when I was in the Army, we did this land navigation. And I don't know if anybody out there has done this before, but it's not just compass reading. But basically, you look on the map and you look at it and you say, okay, I want to go there. I'm here and I want to go there. All right. And I look at the map and I say, okay, I'm here and I want to go there. And I look outside, I look at the terrain, I marry it up with what's on the map. And then I take my compass, I point the compass, and I say, okay, there's my heading, there's my azimuth. And I point it not to that far, far distant thing that I might not even be able to see. That mountaintop that I'm trying to get to is not even in my range of vision right now. But I know that that tree 300 yards away is right in line with my bigger target. Does that make sense, Rob?
Yes.
Okay. So I take my compass and I say, okay, I'm going to just go from here to the tree because I know it's in line with my ultimate goal. I close the compass and then I tear out for the tree. And I do my best to stay focused just on getting to the tree. I don't have to keep looking at the compass. I don't have to look at the map. I just go for the tree. I get to the tree. I pick another goal. It's still on my path. It's still on my heading to a larger goal. And this is how you are able to move quickly and efficiently in this land navigating. You read the terrain, you look at your map, you shoot what we call an azimuth, and you head off for the next point. So we can do that kind of thing in life. We can say, okay, I'm not sure how this whole journey to this task, getting this task, is going to look. I got to get this college degree. Oh my gosh, I don't even see how that's going to happen. But what's the next class I have to take? I can tell you, in building this whole YouTube channel and all these other things we're getting involved in, it's one challenge at a time, just like the challenges we've had tonight with some of the broadcasts. One step at a time. Always double checking what's my direction? What's my goal? Which way do I say I want to go? Is this next task in keeping with where I say I want to go? If it's not, is it a diversion? Is it just a distraction? Is it that, well, it's easy to do. It's not really moving me in the right direction, but it's something to do. I feel productive. It's kind of like having a expectant father boil water. Why? For no other reason other than to feel productive. It doesn't do anything except make him feel good. So, are you guys boiling water? Or actually, are you assisting? Are you moving in the direction? Does that start to go in what you're looking for there?
Yeah.
Okay. What else did we have here, Rob?
We had a comment from someone just saying they can hear us and see us now, although the live stream was a little choppy at the beginning.
Okay, good.
And they're just thanking us for putting this together. And really, it's our pleasure.
Oh, this is fun. I don't know if you can hear this, but I think they were throwing this party for us. It's actually not, but as I said, there's an engagement party going on behind us, so it's kind of festive, and we kind of joke that I don't know what's going to happen, what kind of music we're going to be hearing, but it is very festive here, and we're having a great time. Thoroughly enjoy this, and all of you that are out there, please tell your friends. Join us on Sunday night. I don't know, for folks here in Eastern Standard Time, 9 to 10. For some of you, might be pushing the envelope for being a little late, but we kind of have this idea of, well, we know we have folks all across the country who are going to be watching, and we have to look at those different time zones and make it available for everyone in those various time zones. So that's why we're there. But also, I want to just take a moment to invite you and to look at the rest of the videos on this on the channel here. We've had about 30 some odd videos giving you some real solid step-by-step training, if you will, on very simple meditation practices, taking these very simple practices and applying them to day-to-day situations, things like resentment and fear and chronic anger, chronic states. So there's a lot of stuff on the channel that I'd love to hear your comments on. I'd like to hear what do you have to say? And as importantly as anything, I want to know what you want to know about. What's on your mind? What's throwing your life off balance right now? We'd say, what's your loudest noise? Loudest noise. What is moving me? What's the noise in my life? What's the loudest noise? What's getting in the way of the stillness in my life? Maybe it's energy vampires. This is just one of the things that can be throwing us off, and we kind of change our perspective on that and realize, energy vampires. That's my loudest noise right now. I've got.
And I don't know if it always feels like noise to me. I mean, I get it, the word, but sometimes it might be, um, I don't know, sensation or the loudest.
Well, sometimes there's a lot of words for it. The word noise. I agree. At first, I didn't understand using the word noise as well. I used to say, what's my greatest imbalance, or what's my greatest pain point, or what's my greatest irritation?
I like the word hang up.
What's hang up? Yeah, hang up might work. Tell me, does that work for you guys? Hang up. Hang up might have some different meaning. It might mean I might have something that's a real irritation to me, or something that's a loud noise. Might not be a hang up, but tell me, what do you guys think out there? The reason I like the word noise is because I've kind of reframed my thinking in that we're moving for clarity, just to move through life with clarity. We need to turn down the noise of life. It's sort of a metaphor. It's not just noise you hear in your ears. I don't know what's going to happen, what kind of music. But it's a noise, other types of noise. Too much visual stimulation is a type of noise. Uh, Anything that complicates my life or gets in the way of the direction I'm trying to go becomes a type of noise. And that's where I'm going. It's something that's the opposite of stillness. Stillness to me brings clarity. But these are words. Whatever works for you. What is taking you off balance? What's throwing you off? What's getting you off track? That's what we're looking for. That's where I want to hear from you. I want to know what you need help with. We can maybe change your perspective, maybe give you some tools. I'd like to hear some more about what you guys have to say about this topic this evening, about energy vampires. But back to this concept of motivation and tasking. What did you have on that, Rob?
Well, it's just what can I do next to move me in the direction I want to say, and I get sometimes I feel like I don't want to do something, but I know I should do it. And is that in the flow, or is that, how do I know the difference between what I should, if it feels grinding and it's, hard on me and it's no fun. I mean, that doesn't mean that it's not in the flow, or that doesn't mean that it's not productive, or that doesn't mean that it's not worth doing, even though it feels like a waste of time, or it feels like just navigating what I should be doing is difficult because emotions say one thing, intellect says another.
So you're asking me, how do you choose which way to go, what to
Yeah.
do? How do I choose what right action is?
Yeah.
How do I know? Is it the right thing to do because it doesn't feel good? So if it hurts, it must be right. If the medicine doesn't taste good, it must be good for me, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or if it doesn't taste good, like, oh, I'm not going to do this
If it
anymore.
doesn't taste good, then I'm going to how do I know? That's a great question, because that actually really boils us down to, um, how to choose. How do we make decisions? How do we make a balanced decision? Any of these things that we're asking you to work on. Again, our topic in the beginning tonight was this energy vampires. How do I know? How do I know that I'm giving past edge? How do I know I'm taking past edge? How do I know that this is an appropriate goal for me? This hinges on some real basic ideas and a basic premise that everything I'm going to be working with you all on, we need to be understanding here. This basic understanding is that we have two components of our identity. And this is something we talk a lot about on the channel. And the first component of our identity is what we call this ego identity, or the ego self. And the other component of our identity that we work with, some people call it the authentic self. I tend to call it the objective observer, or for tonight, we'll just call it the observer. In yoga, there's a term they call the Atman, or the self. But the point is this: the ego identity, the ego self, is that part of us which encompasses the body, the mind, our thoughts, our emotions. It's the part of us that navigates a good part of our day-to-day lives. Most people run their lives, go through their lives thinking that's who they are. In reality, there is another part of you. It's really another level of consciousness, another level of awareness. I think awareness is a really good word. And that's the observer. It's the part of you that is not your mind, it's not your thoughts, it's not your emotions or your body, and hence is not subject to the fluctuations of the mind or the emotions of the body. The ego self is in constant change, constant flux. If we identify ourselves solely based on those ever-changing thoughts, emotions, roles we play, temporary and false identities we assume, or even our body, which is constantly changing and eventually aging, if that's who we think we are, if that's the place we make all of our decisions from, we're really on kind of shaky ground because it's always changing. It's subject to so many external influences. Where we want to be able to go is to find a way to drop into that awareness of the objective observer, or the self, the larger self. And kind of go with me on this. If this is new language for you, I know a lot of the folks that are watching tonight are students of mine or folks that have heard this a lot. But for some of you, this could be brand new talk. So just hear it, kind of digest it, throw your questions out as you need to. So this objective observer is the place that when we can identify with them, when I can just sit back and observe my thoughts, observe what's going on in my life, just step out of the bubble for a minute and sit back and look. That's the place I make decisions of what is right action. Does that make sense, Rob?
Yes.
Okay. So much of what we're going to be talking about ultimately on this channel, and this is not an open and closed topic tonight, is how to step into that awareness of the authentic self, or the observer. What does it do for me? How do I get there? How do I know when I'm there? What is it again? What do you mean I'm not my thoughts and my emotions? We start to practice, and there's some very simple practices, and we come into it very gently. Once we realize that we are able to identify ourselves with the observer, we can start to see ourselves with a new perspective. That is the key. To gain a new perspective, a new vantage point, one that is less reactive. I had a conversation just before I came over here this evening with one of my neighbors, and really nice guy. Really, he might be watching tonight, so if you are, how you doing? Andy, if you're watching, this is you. And we had this discussion just about this very thing. And I asked him to do a couple little simple exercises. And one of the comments he made was, he said, I'm really having a hard time. I don't know if I can step out of my thoughts. I can't observe my thoughts. I don't know how to do that. I said, this is a very common issue, very common problem. And this is connected now to this, how do I choose right action? How do I know that this is the right thing to do? Where do I make that decision from? The most balanced, the most potent, the most effective way to make decisions in life, and I'm talking about the bigger decisions. I'm not talking about should it be a Phillips or a flathead screwdriver. I'm talking about the relationship, jobs, these bigger moves in life. We want to make them from the vantage point of the observer. Just get that range of motion to sit back and I can make this decision based on that. I called the observer to Andy when I was talking to him this evening. I said, this is because he's a guy, so I could say this. It's like going into your man cave. I call it the inner man cave. Oh, what's a man cave? Well, I've asked a half a dozen people this last week, guys, what does a man cave mean to you? And kind of across the board, in their own words, they said this: it's a place that I can just be without pretense or expectations or being what other people want me to do. I can just be. I thought that was perfect. Perfect example. So this is your inner man cave. That's the couch you sit down in your inner man cave and you just are. It's just an awareness. From there, we can look at ourselves objectively and make better decisions. This is the source of our intuition. This is where we make those really powerful, intuitive, genuinely intuitive decisions. I was reading a while back, I'm a history buff, and I was reading this interesting article about some of the great leaders of the 20th century. And they were talking about, the author was talking about how they made some of these, amazing, huge decisions, whether it was from, D-Day to a president making decision, FDR about the New Deal, or these large things to do with war and economics and what have you. And what across the board, this is how these great leaders made those decisions. They did their homework, they collected their intelligence, they gathered their data, got all their experts on board, looked at the information, and when the final decision was made, every one of them, and we know this from interviews and diaries and what have you, letters and things they've written, they made those final decisions from an intuitive place. I can't help but believe that whether they knew it or not, they were stepping out, they were backing into that inner man cave, if you will, observing the scene less reactively, not in the bubble of emotion and random thoughts, but they were making it from an objective observer platform. And they made these big decisions. And across the board, for where they were at the time, I think they made the best decision they could at the time because they made it from that place. Does that start to connect with what some of the things you were asking there, Rob, about where do you make right decision from?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's easy to sit here and theorize about it, but when I get to the moment, it's a whole nother.
When you get to the moment, so what it really requires is this is a practice. And this is a practice we're going to unfold. I unfold it in the other videos on this channel, but we'll unfold it also in these chats. And I really like some real-time feedback down the road on how these things are working for you. This is a practice. This is why it's actually a meditative practice. This is the essence. This is the essence. I'm going to say this 3 times. This is the essence of a meditative practice. Meditation is not to bliss out or zone out or go on a mental vacation, what have you. Ultimately, it's to connect your awareness with that objective observer level of consciousness. And from there, we can then we can do some real work on ourselves. We can really move our lives in the direction we say we want to. In fact, the premise of the path is a 4-step meditative process I developed based on the meditative tradition of yoga. But these 4 steps: pause, assess, take action, and heal. The whole process is designed really to do one thing, and that is to get you to step out of the moment, out of the fire, step back, observe the scenario, connect with the objective observer, and then start to make appropriate decisions and take appropriate actions. We can't take the most appropriate actions if we can't step out of it. We're too wrapped up in the emotion and the thought of the situation. We're too angry, we're too sad. But if we can just do that, and when you take that observer perspective, the relaxation response in your nervous system kicks in. It in itself, without any other techniques, without any other magic breath techniques, and without any other mantras or any other things that we may use later on, just stepping back and observing yourself objectively is the huge move to resolving and preventing chronic stress. And that's what the path was designed for, was to help you get out of the stress of the moment, have a clear head, and make correct decisions. So I invite you to get into some of those videos. I'd love to hear you say, look at some of those videos and tell me what you think and ask me questions. Some of them are a little longer than others, but there's a lot of meat there, and there's a lot of things to go back and practice with. And a lot of our future content is going to be just along those lines. But the key is that what Rob was saying is, yeah, it's okay to sit here in this chat or even, open a book, look at a video and say, yeah, I get it, but can I take it to the street and do it? That is what the other videos that we're going to be doing on a daily basis here coming up very soon. It's going to be taking these basic tools and how can I apply them to my daily life? I don't know if you can hear it, but we're getting an applause for this. So they must really like it. How do you take these tools to your daily life? Tonight, that's what we're doing with this chat too. We're trying to get your input and some real life stuff. And how does this apply? So in order to deal with those energy vampires, back to the beginning, how can I really get some clarity on what's going on in my life? Be able to step back and observe yourself. Just be able to step back, sit in your inner man cave. And I'm sorry, ladies that are watching, you can have an inner woman cave too. If you can have your space, your sacred space. Like women can have sacred space as well. That's another way of saying man cave. Man cave is just a popular term, but it's a sacred space, and that sacred space is internal. You might find one, a room in your house or someplace out in nature that works for you, but it's that place you can drop back to. Okay, now the party is cranking up, Rob.
The party's begun.
Okay, this is like the timing is great. I promise you I will not do two things tonight. I will not dance and I will not sing. So I think our channel does have hope for a future if I just don't do that, right? What else we got over there, Rob?
I don't know. They're doing the electric slide downstairs.
Yeah, the electric slide, is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I think we had that at my wedding. They still do this?
I think so. Well, it's one of those dances. I'm not sure.
Yeah. The hokey pokey is the one I hope never to hear again.
As you were talking, I was thinking about, what's the difference between wisdom and knowledge?
Well, he throws it. We got 10 minutes here, and he's going to seed this. What's the difference between wisdom and knowledge? And I've got the electric slide or something going on behind me here. Knowledge is actually, this is a fairly easy one, in the sense that I can speak to it in a relatively easy way. But knowledge is basically, let's look at three things. There's information, there's knowledge, and there's wisdom. And we can pretty much, information is data. Knowledge is the ability to take the data and apply it. So you can give me the ingredients to, we can be current with this. The information is I know the basic physics of nuclear physics. I understand the components. I understand the raw data. I know how to put these pieces together. The chemistry, the physics. The knowledge then allows me to make either a nuclear reactor for energy or allows me to make a nuclear bomb. The knowledge is how to use the information. Wisdom is informing me, should I even use it, or when I should use it. What would be appropriate use of this? Okay, does that make sense? Information, knowledge, and wisdom. Now, the interesting thing is information and knowledge become the topics, are navigated by that ego self, that our mind, our thoughts, and our emotions. We gather data and information through our senses. It's processed through the mind. The mind then is able to take that information and use it. It's like putting a recipe together. I can put these components together and make something. But where do I go for that wisdom? The mind is not capable of two things. The intellect is not capable of two things. And I bet I'll get some argument on this, and I'd love to hear from you guys. The intellect is not capable of wisdom. That is in the field of the observer, the authentic self. The other thing that the intellect is not capable of is love. Love is a feature of the authentic self or the objective observer. In fact, real inspiration comes from the authentic self. True creativity comes from that.
It's kind of hard to focus with all that. That music is so loud.
We're working under some tough conditions tonight, Rob.
Yeah, yeah.
So we're
working with the flow.
We're working with the flow. We're in our studio. We have a couple places that we film, and we're in our studio here in downtown St. Pete. And we've got, if you haven't been with us for very long, you're just coming in at the end here. We've got an engagement party out here, and it gives us some really great lights in the background, but it's also giving us now some background music, a little competition for our audio.
Well, maybe we should just kind of go over the state of the channel
Yeah, let's do that. So the channel here is our YouTube channel has been up for just a few months, and the content we've been putting up there is we've been putting up some of the basic informative videos, some of the core videos to understand the meditative processes, some of the basic, if you will, applied philosophy that's the foundation of everything we're talking about.
The genesis of this started when we went out there and it wasn't available.
Well, this is true. We identified that what we're trying to do with the channel, we haven't found another channel yet, and Rob, more than I even, Rob's been scouring YouTube for quite a while now, looking to see if other channels are actually doing the same type of thing we're doing, with the same premise and the same applied philosophy and the same application, same kind of language, and they're not. Apparently, to this point, we haven't found anything. And we're trying to take these foundational ideas, and we're trying to take them out of the mystical and out of the philosophy books a little bit and put them in everyday language and tools that people can use to navigate their lives. Some of these basic tools, some of these meditation practices, some of these, lack of a better word, we say applied philosophical concepts that are just, they're inherent, they're the thread that run through all the wisdom traditions of the world. This isn't just coming from one tradition or another. This is the basic philosophy, the basic thought pattern that goes through all the wisdom traditions. And whatever tradition you're coming from, or whatever faith, or whatever religion, or whatever philosophy, go back to what you've been using as your guidepost and see how this stuff marries up with what you've learned. And the channel, we found that there's nothing out here like this. So I've been teaching, and Rob's been teaching as well for years now. I've been teaching yoga and meditation, my background in holistic health, doing a lot of work with people one-on-one with life coaching, if you will. And so this is all based on my experiences and some of Rob's experiences with what are people needing? What have people been asking for? What have they been coming to us for? What questions have they had? And said, there's a need out there to answer these questions and give people really powerful tools. What's not out there are doing practices, really streamlined, stripped down, point A to point B, sequential processes to do these things that have been made to be a little bit too, either too much medical jargon on how the brain works or too much mysticism on, trying to become things or be some sort of, I don't know what. Trying to lose some of the guru language, lose some of the framework, the furniture, some of these philosophical systems or religions even. So that's what we've been trying to do. We've been working on creating this content. We're going to have a daily, as I said, we're going to have a daily offering coming up very soon, probably in the next week. Look for those in your feed. If you are on tonight and you have a Gmail account, please subscribe. And if you don't have a Gmail account, try to subscribe. And I'll tell you what, YouTube will guide you step by step, just like we guide you, step by step, to get an account, which is very easy. And then you can subscribe and you can chat in and you can add content, and we can hear from you on a regular basis. What else do you want to say about the channel, Rob?
I was going to say next week, if you have something that is a question or something that comes up during your week, write it down and bring it next week. That's what this live chat is for. It's for you. It's not for us.
Right. And you can also, speaking of that, you can email me. My email, if it comes up on these on the channel here. You can go to my email address, which is, um, in fact, if you go to my, better yet, go to my webpage. Go to warnerhealingguidance.com. It'll coach you into just giving me your email address, and it'll get you into a flow of getting some free content. You'll get a free meditation guide on the 4-step path. You'll get some access to some videos that are not available on the channel right now, and also give you a vector to email me, and we can get into a dialogue via email, maybe in between these live chats. So I get a sense of, hey, what do you need to know? What are you interested in? You'll get a better chance to look at what we're trying to do, what this channel is all about. We're here to change lives. We're here to give you guidance, basically give you some tools, a toolbox. This is day-to-day real stuff. This isn't coffee table philosophy, sitting around with aperitifs. Intellectual debate really doesn't have a lot of place here. If someone, I love discussing, but I'm going to ask you, if you do the practice. This is a doing practice. If you have a disagreement with something that I say and you have some direct experience with it, great. Let's discuss it. If not, just try what I ask you to try. Just try it, and then come back and we can discuss it. We'll be working on it, working on our direct experience, our truth. We're not giving you any truth, and this is maybe a good note to start to come off the broadcast tonight. The teacher does not give the student truth. No book gives you the truth. The truth we're trying to give is the truth you gain through your direct experience. The teacher, the job of the teacher is, to the best of their ability, based on the fact they've had direct experience, is to put the student in a set of circumstances where they are more than likely to have their own chance to have an experience. That's what we are, just orchestrating, giving you some basic tools to have your experience of what your truth is. Making your decisions, not following a dogma, not following somebody's rules, not following some theories. Guiding you, lead your life in a balanced way, move away from pain, and find your own truth. I want to thank you all this evening for joining us. This is a lot of fun. We have no idea what the party is going to look like next week, but next week, same time, it's every Sunday from 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here at this station. We look forward to seeing you next week, and until we meet again, good night.